I've been waiting 12 years to make this. Now, what I'm about to say is probably going to make a lot of people really mad, but it's the truth. Look at this. This is a graphic I put together of every interview I've done with one of my breakup success stories. Here's how their journey typically goes. Their ex breaks up with them. They frantically try to get that ex back. In a moment of desperation, they go to Google or YouTube. They stumble across my content. They think to themselves, hey, this might actually work. They end up buying one of my products or coaching services. They struggle for months. They eventually see some progress, and then they reunite with their ex. Happy ending, right? Well, for most of them, no. Let's take a look at that timeline graphic I put together again a little bit more closely. Now, each one of these individuals got their exes back. It is public record. You can literally listen to their stories on my podcast, like Sarah Michelle here.
Instantly, that was when he was FaceTiming me. That was that was when my phone was constantly getting blown up.
Yet the more time that goes on, you start to notice a worrying trend. Within a month, 10% of those success stories have been broken up with again. Within 2 months, that number jumps to 35%. Within 3, 40%. By month 7, 50%. Month 12, 70%. 70% of the people that I had a direct hand or even indirect hand in helping reunite are broken up again 1 year later. That's a staggering number. Now, don't get me wrong, some of them do make it. They can end up taking the next step and getting married, like Jesse here.
I don't know if he wants to chime in. We call our love honey dripping love. That's how easy it is. That's the hashtag on all of my Instagram posts with him.
But she's more of the exception to the rule. More of the stories go like Sarah Michelle's, who got her ex back, immediately did an interview with me, got engaged to her ex, broke up again, then did another interview with me after she moved on to someone else. This is the average trajectory that a success story is likely to go through. Yet no one ever talks about it. It's the dirty little secret no one wants you to know. Because the breakup industry, whether you like it or not, and it's weird to call it an industry, but it is ruled by greed. It puts profits over people in an instance where you should be putting people over profits. Think about it like this. Imagine you go to a car salesman and he walks you over to the lot and says, hey, pick any car you want. We can guarantee it'll work most of the time. You get incredibly excited, so you pick a car. Hand over your hard-earned money, and you drive off the lot with your brand new car. Everything's great. But what the car salesman neglected to tell you is that 70% of the cars on his lots were duds. At some point in the next few months, that car you just drove off with is going to break down. Now, if the car salesman was honest about the fact that 70% of the cars on his lot were duds, then you'd have likely walked away and he wouldn't have made any money. The breakup industry, and again, really weird to be calling it an industry, doesn't want you to know that in most cases, getting that happy ending you're so desiring will just end up right back to where you started. It's not exactly the greatest pitch, is it? And this has always bothered me. Quite frankly, it's the reason I don't like what I do. I've accomplished a lot in the last 12 years. Created one of the larger breakup-focused websites on the internet. Hosted one of the larger breakup podcasts. Did this YouTube channel. Coached thousands of people. Sold tens of thousands of books and programs. And despite all of that, I'm not proud of it. It's even gotten to the point where I'm approached by neighbors or strangers and they ask me, hey, what do you do for a living? I lie to them. I don't want them to know that I had a hand in helping people get back with their exes, which is this weird thing. But it all boils down to one simple fact. I know what to do to accomplish the goal, but I also know that accomplishing the goal for most of the people who want to accomplish the goal will end up right back where they started. It creates this perpetual cycle where the client goes through the breakup, they come to me and ask me for advice, they get back with their ex, the ex breaks up again, and then it's a rinse and repeat. What's the point? Well, around 2021, I started researching a lot about attachment theory and attachment styles. And I learned some really interesting things about our audience. For instance, most of our clients identify as anxious preoccupied, which basically means that their core wound revolves around a perpetual fear of being abandoned. And for someone with an anxious attachment style, going through a breakup is just like your worst nightmare coming true. Here's what's happening. This is a visual representation of your biochemistry at the beginning of a relationship. Now, I want you to take special notice how all of the major chemicals are elevated. Now, this is likely due to the fact that at the beginning of a relationship, you're going through this honeymoon period. Eventually, though, this happens. Your levels sort of even out. But when you go through a breakup, your brain chemistry goes out of whack. Now, do you see that big spike there? That's your cortisol levels. Now, cortisol, of course, is lovingly referred to as the stress hormone. Now, I'd like to turn your attention to this quote from Belinda Kirkpatrick, who is a naturopath. It can take 3 to 4 hours for your cortisol levels to return to normal after a stress response, like an argument or a high-stakes meeting. But Kirkpatrick notes, if your levels have been high for some time, it can take up to 6 months to balance them out. And it's that last bit that's important. If your levels have been high for some time, it can take as much as 6 months to balance them out. So here's what I see. You have an anxiously attached individual who gets their heart broken. Their cortisol levels spike. They start obsessing about their ex. Their cortisol levels stay elevated. They go online to search for a solution. Their cortisol levels stay elevated. They stumble across something within the breakup industry. Their cortisol levels stay elevated. Do you see the problem here? The more likely your cortisol levels are to stay at this high range, the more difficult the breakup is bound to become. And it's exactly like Belinda says. The longer your cortisol levels stay elevated in this high state, the longer it will take for them to even out and for you to become kind of normal and function normally again. Exactly like Belinda says. At no point throughout this process is anyone coming up to these individuals who are clearly struggling and basically telling them that, hey, your cortisol levels have spiked. We need to really focus on bringing those cortisol levels down. Instead, what you get is individuals who emphasize focusing so much on breakups and exes that it sort of keeps those cortisol levels in this perpetual raised state. Now, by no means am I saying the breakup industry is bad and me good. For years, I have been guilty of perpetuating this exact problem. I'm not above admitting that. The truth is, you tend to want to publicize your successes and sort of minimize your failures, but what I've come to learn over the years is that you actually learn a lot more from failures than you do successes. And here's the part where I'm almost certain I'm bound to make a lot of people very angry. I do not want to help you get your ex back. Instead, I want to help you overcome your anxious attachment. Now, the irony is that if you can do that, if you can manage to lower your cortisol, shift your anxious attachment style towards being more secure, this naturally draws your ex back. Yet that's not the popular thing to say. That's not what sells. What does end up selling is magic bullet solutions. You know the stuff. Get your ex back in 30 days. Get back with her. Get an ex back in 30 days. Everyone seems to be obsessed with this 30-day time frame. And everyone wants a magic bullet, but a magic bullet does not exist when it comes to breakups, at least. There is no perfect framework. Take a look at all those success story interviews. Now, each one of them had a different situation. They had to use different strategies. They each made different mistakes. And after interviewing them all, as far as I can tell, there's only one common theme. Most of them emotionally got to a point where they didn't want their exes back anymore. And of course, that's when the exes come back into the picture. But this got me thinking, is this a fake it until you make it type of a situation? Well, I think actually one of our success stories, Lee, might have the answer to that.
It's just the biggest thing is, and it's not like fake it till you make it, but you have to I would look at myself in the mirror every morning and be like, you are beautiful, you are smart, and it's not on you. This is not on you anymore.
So no, faking it until you make it does not work. Let's pretend that we have two individuals. Let's call them Sarah and Kai. Now, both of them have the same goal. They want to be reunited with their ex, which I'm trying to argue in this video is the wrong goal to have. So both Sarah and Kai come to me, and I give them the same advice. I tell them that it should be less about getting an ex back and more about taking the anxiety that is controlling your life and mastering it. I also point out that if you're able to do this, it actually raises your chances of getting the result that you want anyways. Why is this though? Well, let's let Sarah and Kai show us. Sarah, upon hearing my advice, doesn't like what she hears. She decides she's gonna pretend she's moving on. After all, if you play the PR game correctly, the ex will be none the wiser. It should have the same effect as someone who actually moves on, right? No. I want to show you something. This is a poll I conducted back in 2021 asking my clients what attachment style they believe their exes exhibited. Yes, I know I'm using the stupid poll again, but hey, it's relevant. Now, as you can see here, the vast majority of our clients believe that their exes exhibit dismissive, avoidant characteristics. Now, why is that important? Well, let me again turn your attention to one of my favorite attachment resources, a beautiful website called freetoattach.com, which lovingly states that avoidants are free to long for an ex once that person is unavailable, out of a relationship, and typically out of contact, so they are untouched by the actual engagement and their deactivation systems aren't triggered. Yes, again, I know I'm using the same quote I always use, but it's highly relevant to the point I'm about to make. And then we have attached. Now, in Attached, the book, it states, once the avoidant person has put time and distance between themselves and the partner with whom they've lost interest in, something strange happens. The feelings of love and admiration return. Let's go back to Sarah. See, the problem is Sarah's just not doing any of that. She's pretending to move on, but not actually moving on. She's asking her ex's friends, hey, what is the ex up to? Facebook stalking the ex, and eventually when the two interact post-breakup, her desperation bleeds through. Let's go back to that free to attach quote. She's not unavailable, and she's not out of contact technically. For Sarah's ex, there's actually no difference between her post-breakup behavior and pre-breakup behavior. And here's the worst part. The thing that really matters, her internal anxiety is getting worse. Remember, anything that keeps cortisol elevated makes it more difficult to return to normal. Every little check-in that Sarah is doing on her ex, every time she logs into Facebook or Instagram and sees a post from them, it keeps her cortisol elevated, making the pain, anxiety, and depression of her breakup last longer. Now let's compare that to Kai. Now, Kai decides to take my advice, to move on from the ex, and instead she decides to focus on shifting her anxious attachment style towards a more secure attachment style. Here's the thing though, how do you do that? Well, I'll let my good friend and psychoanalyst Erica Comazar explain that one.
Yeah.
This is how you're safe, so the therapist is basically takes that over.
A relationship broke it, and only a relationship can fix it.
So a relationship broke it, and only a relationship can fix it. Basically, the way to become more secure within yourself is to pour your energy into relationships. But it has to be the right type of relationships. Attached talks about this really crazy experiment done with rats and rat pups. Now, the experiment was conducted by Myron Hoffer of Columbia University. He basically found that when rat pups are separated from their mothers, a number of physiological reactions occur. You'll find that their activity level goes down, their heart rate goes down, so does their growth hormone level. Now, in Hoffer's studies, he gradually replaced each maternal attribute with a substitute. He warmed the pups with a heating pad, fed them so their stomachs were full, pet them with a brush, imitating the mother's licking, and he found that each intervention helped only one aspect of their separation distress, but only one. The only thing that helped alleviate all symptoms was a reunion with the mothers. And this pretty much explains why people grow so obsessed with getting their exes back after a breakup. Inherently, they understand that the only way to fix the crazy chemistry, the crazy things happening inside of their body is to get their ex back, much like those rat pups trying to get back to their mother. Yet, as I pointed out at the very beginning of this video, for most people who do end up getting back with their exes, it's a band-aid. It solves the problem immediately, but it's not a long-term solution. For most of them, a breakup will inevitably occur again, and when that happens, they're right back to where they started, ruminating, obsessing, kind of entering into this limerent state over the limerent object, their ex. Here's my point. Relationships are the key to becoming more secure in your life, but the right type of relationships. And right after a breakup, that often does not include your ex. Let's go back to Kai. So she's identified she's got these 3 friends. Now, one of these 3 friends has a secure attachment style, but the other 2 are incredibly anxious. Rather than pouring her energy into all 3 equally like she was doing before, she decides to pour most of her energy into her secure friend, much to the chagrin of the 2 anxious friends. But doing so enables Kai to see firsthand what secure behavior actually looks like. Kai also starts redistributing her priorities. Before, her number 1 priority was always her ex. Now it's a passion project she's always wanted to engage in but never had the time to. It's not an overnight process, but slowly and surely she starts finding that she cares less and less about her ex. And this vibe, this is what draws her ex back into the fray. It's not something she said, it's not some clever text ratio, it's who she has become after the breakup. Now I know most of the people who clicked on this video probably aren't watching anymore. I probably made them mad, they probably clicked out, whatever. There's a cat video on the side, whatever. For those of you who did stay, for those of you who are going through a breakup, I want to remind you of something. You shouldn't want your ex back. That's the wrong mentality to have. I've literally shown you the likely outcome that will occur if you do get your ex back. Rather, having an ex come back should be a symptom of you investing in yourself. Identify areas that you can improve. You're anxious? Cool, let's become more secure. You're not assertive or good at holding boundaries? Cool, let's become better. The longer I live, the more I think the ancient samurai had it right. They would live their life in an endless pursuit of perfection, knowing full well that perfection was impossible. Yet it's not so much about being perfect, it's about the journey to get there. That's where the epiphanies come. That's where the change is wrought. Forget your ex, invest here, and trust me, that's what will work on them.